All right, we are live. It was interesting. Gene Edward Veith had an article in his daily blog this week about non-denominational churches, and I have been very careful to speak and articulate that non-denominational really is not non-denominational. And they say, "Oh, I go to a non-denominational church. We believe either everything or anything." And I say, "Well, tell me about you baptize babies?" "No." "Well, then you're Baptist." "No, we're not. We're non-denominational." "No, you're Baptist." and part of it was interesting because Dr. Veith made the point that if you really want to get down to what denomination a non-denominational church is, there's one primary place you can look, and that's the sacraments. And I was going to add a comment, but I don't like getting tied down in discussions like that because they just consume way too much of your time. The other place where a church is not going to be is clearly denominational, will be in its dealing with the millennium and the end times. That would be the second place, that if you really want to go and see a denomination, if a non-denominational church considers themselves to be that, they're probably millennials, which are very denominational as well. So, all right.
Fox River actually was formed from the Baptist church that used to be East Avenue.
Yeah. Elmbrook was Elmbrook Baptist, right? Or was it Brookfield Baptist? I can't remember when Stewart first renamed it, but I noticed that the Dayspring one that came up on 94 across from Orthopedic Associates, they have Dayspring Church and School and everything, but if you go to their website, they are Dayspring Baptist. They articulate. I think their Adopt a Highway sign says Dayspring Baptist as well. So. Well, I haven't. There was a great Babylon Bee article. It had a spinner to name your new church, and it had like spring and winter, and then some body of water like brook or creek or something like that. And then it was really funny. But no, I wonder sometimes, and I wonder if there's going to be a transition like the church will identify with its denomination more than non-denominational. To me, it was a marketing thing more than anything else. If you're non-denominational, then you can believe we're not tied. Their idea of non-denominational means that they insist that it's not a theological thing, but they're not tied to a higher organization because that's some form of congregational slavery or something like that. That they're independent in that way, and then they're more free to believe whatever they want and things like that. But I don't know whether it's to hide their theology or that part of it, that they're not connected. But even a lot of these mega churches, like Elmbrook, is I think a part of the Willow Creek Association. I mean, there are loose associations, theological associations, primarily Willow Creek and Saddleback. So, but anyhow. I had that in my mind with our Bible class. We talked about the millennia a couple weeks ago, and things of the end times, eschatology and eschatological things are different in the different Christian churches. All right, so where are we? We got through the first verses of chapter 21, and it's really striking as we look at the last two chapters of Revelation. My hope is to finish it next week, do chapter 22, the entire chapter. And the reason why I hope to do that is that the following week, I'll be on vacation with my family. Pastor Don Duberstein will be here, and I think I'll encourage him to do something in Bible class. But since we'll be done with this, then he's free to do whatever he wants to do. So, and he is very capable, especially Don. So, hasn't been with us in quite a long time, but looking forward to him helping out. So, make sure you come to church now that you know I'm not going to be here. Please? All right. So, it's striking that we have chapters 21 and 22 depicting for us the triumphant church, the holy bride of Christ, the new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven. We spend all these verses of 2 chapters talking about victory. And go back to what we had last week. And think of how small, how short it was, the way the Bible described the defeat of Satan. Almost of God just Remember, he sent the fire down from heaven, consumed it up, gone. And it's kind of the opposite of what we think or how we see things. We look at the fight as the big monumental thing rather than the victory. I mean, how long did it take after the Bucks won last night, which I only thought about, I was on the way in this morning, I'm like, oh, I wonder what the score of the Bucks game was. We got softball all week. What do I care about the Bucks, right? 10U softball is the thing right now. And I saw they won in overtime. Well, that was pretty cool, but, the cameras turn off. We don't have so much of the after part, right, as we do of the actual, and it was a brutal game from what I understand, too, just, the way the players described it. And as we think about our situation in the church, we may think that this is, this is everything, it's this fight, and then it'll be all done. But we spend all this time looking at the picture of the glory of the bride of Christ, the church, and all of its triumph. It is the church triumphant, no longer the church militant. We don't need to sit here and languish and talk about the defeat of the enemy. Who cares about that? Get it over with. God does. Let's talk about the joy that we will have. So that's chapters 21 and 22. And we pick it up in 21, and again, reminding ourselves, we have John trying to describe for us in human terms what he's seeing. And it's so much of a challenge to put words and descriptions. It looks like this, it looks like that, trying to put these images in human terms. The New Jerusalem continued, chapter 21, beginning with verse 9. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls that were filled with the 7 last plagues came and spoke with me. He said, "Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." He carried me away in spirit to a great and high mountain, and he showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. It has the glory of God. Its radiance is similar to a very precious stone, like crystal clear jasper. It has a large high wall. It has 12 gates. 12 angels are at the 12 gates, and 12 names are engraved on the gates, the names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel. 3 gates are on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, and 3 on the west. The city's walls also have 12 foundations, and on them are the 12 names of the Lamb's 12 apostles. The one who spoke with me had a gold measuring rod so that he could measure the city, its gates, and its wall. The city is laid out as a square. Its length and width are equal. He measured the city with a measuring rod, 12,000 stadia. Its length, width, and height are equal. He also measured its wall by human measurement, which was what the angel used, 144 cubits. The wall is made of jasper, and the city is pure gold, like pure glass. The foundations of the city wall had been adorned with every kind of precious stone. The first foundation is jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth ruby, the seventh diamond, eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th turquoise, the 11th jacinth, the 12th amethyst. The 12 gates are 12 pearls. Each of the gates is made out of one pearl, and the street of the city is pure gold, like transparent glass. I did not see a temple in the city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or moon to shine on it, because the glory of God has given it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. There is no day when its gates will be shut, for there will be no night in that place. They will bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it. Nothing that is unclean, and no one who does what is detestable or who tells lies will ever enter it, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. Of course, that's another reference to the book of life that we had previously. So fill in the blanks. An angel takes John to a mountain to see the New Jerusalem. The city had 12 gates and was built on 12 foundations. Just before you turn the page, before we get into the significance of the structure of the New Jerusalem, this angel, notice who this angel is. And this helps us to understand that, the structure of the book of Revelation, not seen as a linear timeline, right? that this happens, and that we see this revolving type of thing, because who is this tour guide angel? We've seen him before, all the way back in chapter 15. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls of God's wrath. We're not going to go back and rehearse. It was, in chapter 15. And then also chapter 17. So it was a section that was chapters 15, 16, and 17. I get the sense that this angel is the same one who in chapter 17 said, "Come, and I will show you the destruction of the great prostitute." But then, of course, it goes into describing the activity of the great prostitute before it gets to its judgment then. So again, it's like we have a tour guide going through here, and we're seeing something we've seen, before. Here's another thought, too. The details of the Lord's victory throughout the book, because we've seen it on several occasions already, was kind of short and sweet. And then we opened it up again and started the whole cycle all over again. Now we get to these 2 chapters, which are, the full, the fullness of the victory of Christ Church. We had it, mentioned throughout, but now we enjoy its fullness. All right, now let's go on to the questions. And we'll come back up to the verses as we go through, because as they're ordered, they don't necessarily fit in order. So, we have the opportunity to think about the significant pieces of the architecture in the New Jerusalem as far as, it looking like, it may strike us, well, is it gold or is it glass, John? Is it gold that looks like glass? Again, he's trying to put in human terms what it looks like. And you think of it this way, too, especially with color. Because what essentially is color? Tammy? It's light reflected, right? It's just what is absorbed of the light and what is reflected in the light. So color is essentially light. So as we're thinking of all these different colors, it's not so much the materials of what they're made of, but how the light reflects off of it, how the light shines off of it. And we'll have the opportunity, well, that's the first thing we're going to talk about. So, you could look at something and it look like gold, but it'd be like glass because of how it's reflecting the light. And if we think of how the Bible describes the light of the glory of God, right, shining as the sun, it would make sense that things look like gold, right? I think of the illusions. We haven't had many of them, but in Michigan, it's so flat. It's so flat, and you're looking out a mile. And when you get the really warm temperatures, you get those mirages where it looks like there's water up ahead, right? What does it look like? It doesn't look like. It looks like there's a big puddle of silver up there. Huh? Whoa! I'm gonna find silver at the end of this road. No, it's more of Wheeler Road. It just keeps going and going, straight east and west. Nothing when you get actually there, but it's just how the light reflects. And so anyhow, how does it receive its light? Verse 11. How does it receive its light? Doesn't need a sun or moon or stars or anything like that. It's the glory of the Lord, right? Especially the glory of the Lamb, too. And I was thinking in my head throughout this whole section, the connection with the beginning of the Bible in Genesis. What was the first thing God did, created? Light. He had to for this creation, right? In the heavenly, in heaven, when the New Jerusalem, the church, is brought into heaven, you don't need created light, because this is a whole different kind of creation and experience. The light is God Himself, and we think of the, when God's glory, His presence is seen, even here on earth. As great as that glory is, it still does not compare to what heaven is like. So you think of the glory of God at the tabernacle, or how it led the people by a pillar of fire, or how when Moses went in, his face reflected the glory of God. Those were just little teeny bits of the glory of God. Or Jesus' transfiguration too, were just little bits of the glory of God here in this earth. There will be the fullness of His glory, and He Himself is its light. And I think it's important for us to, in our minds, to realize that this heavenly experience is nothing like we can ever imagine or have experienced. Again, we always frame heaven in, in a way based on our experience and how things are. So God will be brighter than the sun. Well, will I be able to look at him, or will I have to No, that's not the way it is. All right. It's gates. What details do we see about the gates? What's that? Yeah, we're going to come to that. That's a great one. That comes up in one of our Lutheran hymns, the Queen of Lutheran Chorales. Made of solid pearl. Again, we can't imagine that, because what are pearls like? Can you imagine an oyster making a pearl? We'll talk about its size too. Well, that must have been one honking oyster, huh? You make a pearl like that? Woof. Yeah, what else about the gates? Yep. Good. I think we're going to talk about that. Yeah, we're going to talk about that on the next page. Just looking at the structure of them. How many, where? Okay, there's 12 total. 3 on each side. That means we have access from all directions, right? And there's something else on the gate. We're going to talk more about that. Yep. Then we're talking about the function of the gates in the next page. Verse 12, incidentally. There's a lot of 12s in that. It has 12 gates, 12 angels, 12 names are engraved on the gates, and those names are 12 tribes of Israel. Referring to what? The mass conversion of the Jews. No. The true Israel, right? So we have a way to, thankfully I haven't done this. My father did it a couple times. When you don't read the sign in the bathroom carefully enough, and you end up in the wrong place, right, by accident. So when you have a name on the room, right, you know where to go, or you know whose room it is. Kids are like this too, right? They put their name, when they're sick and tired of the little brothers and sisters coming in their room all the time, they put their name on their room, right? No trespass. That happens in your house all the time, right? Don't come into my room. Girls kick you out, don't they? They always come into your room. This is my room, right? You put your name on it, because this is where you belong. So think of the names of the 12 tribes. You have all access, and the people, the true Israel, the true believers are flowing in. You're like, this is where I belong. There's my name. I'm coming right on in. Of course, if a person does not belong to those tribes, that true Israel, they're looking at it saying, oh, this isn't the place for me. All right, it's 12 gates. The 12 tribes, the only one who gets in are the true Israelites. Of course, now we have this whole bathroom situation. I was in Seattle a few years ago, and they had, they didn't have men's and women's bathrooms. There were just bathrooms. And it's one of those things where I feel sorry for the ladies when they have, ladies don't want to be in men's bathrooms. It's just, it's disgusting in there. Anyhow, its walls. What are its walls like? Think of a wall. And this gets to what Gary was saying to a certain extent. Walls more so than gates. Yeah, it's to enclose, so it's to keep people in and keep people out, right? The gates are to allow people in and allow people out, but the walls are permanent, right? That means there's not going, it's so that we see the absolute security, but the security is going to come out in another way too. What about its size and shape? Let's go to the last two passages above regarding its size and shape. So this is Solomon's temple. And it's reflective of the tabernacle architecture as well. He prepared the inner room of the sanctuary inside the building as a place to set the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. The inner sanctuary was 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 30 feet high, and he overlaid it with pure gold. So what is its shape? It's a cube, right? Not just a square. Square is two-dimensional, a cube is three-dimensional, right? So a cube, you think of it as, and as a cube, it has to have equal sides, right? Only fit for God. And so the most holy place, both in the tabernacle and the temple, were squares, were cubes, reflecting God's perfection. But no, it's size. Revelation 11 we saw already. A measuring rod like a staff was given to me. He said, stand up and measure the incense altar in the temple of God and those who worship it. Exclude the outer court of the temple and do not measure it, because it has been given to the heathen. They will trample the holy city for 42 months. And so the measuring area is, okay, this is the space for God's people. Now, what about the size? Did anybody catch what the size is? It's written in biblical term. 140. That was the size of the wall. It's measuring it. We measure things differently. We measure things by volume. That's the idea of cubit. But the other one, be measuring it more like distance. Verse 16. Come on, it's right there. Stadia. 12. How many? 12,000. Oh, let me remember 12s we have here. Remember what 12? What makes 12? What times what is 12? 3 times 4 is 12. You learn that in a special place. It's not church, right? School. By the way, who knows any more details about Millard Fillmore? Those of you that are in first service. I made reference to Millard Fillmore. Go ahead, Pat. Of course you would do that. Joni. You asked. Yeah. Oh, he did. I didn't know that detail about him. Boy, we know all these very obscure details. We could win Jeopardy. Yeah. Fillmore was never elected. Zach Taylor died from his overdose of cherries and milk when he got gastroenteritis in his first year of his term, and then Fillmore finished the term and lost. Who was the next? Was it Franklin Pierce, the worst president of the United States ever? They say. Let's not go into politics or anything. All right. So anyhow, 12,000 stadia. If it comes out to equivalent, if you have your Bible, 1,400 miles, which isn't a 12, but it still gives it 1,400 miles. How far is 1,400 miles? Tammy, how far is it to Wyoming, where you guys went?
It was 1,000 miles from here to
Buffalo, Wyoming, 1,000 miles. So we're even 200 miles past Buffalo, Wyoming.
So it'll be like from here to
Yellowstone, about, yep. So about here to Yellowstone is 1,200 miles. So now think of this cube that's from here to Yellowstone long, from here to Yellowstone high, and from here to Yellowstone wide. Whoa, this is a big thing. This is bigger than most, this is huge, right? Of course it is. It's the church triumphant. Notice also as a cube, I like this idea that Dr. Becker had too. It's always fascinating when we look at old houses and even those built in the 70s. Here's the house. And then what happened? Then the family grew, and what did you have to do? You had to add on to the house. And then you had to add on this part of the house. So is the house a cube anymore, in a sense? No, it's got this addition on it and this addition. This one just stands out over here across from the Y because that upper apartment burned down. But every time I drove by, those apartments sticking out of the building, they're hoisted up like that. I'm like, it's got to be crooked in there. They just, I'm just going to bust out this wall and build something here and put a couple 2x4s to hoist it up. It's like, there's deer blinds that are built more, better than that. But yeah, so you think of it, it's perfect already. There's not going to be any additions made to this or need to be made to this at a later time. All right, now it's foundations. It gives us the opportunity to look at the first two passages. And by the way, the middle passage, Romans 9, I should have brought that one up and read it with its gates. That talks about the descendants of Abraham and the true Israel. Let's go to the top passage, Ephesians 2, Matthew 16, as we consider the foundations. So then you are no longer foreigners and strangers, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and members of God's household. You have been built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus himself as the cornerstone. Jesus said to them, But you, who do you say I am, that I am? Simon Peter answered, You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus replied, Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, For flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven, and I tell you that you are Peter. And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not overpower it. So what do we learn about the foundations? And we've seen this before. When we talk about the 12 apostles, what are we referring to? The church is built on the foundations of the apostles and prophets. So the foundations here in Revelation 21, the 12 we saw the 12 names of the tribes and the gates, and the 12 names of the 12 apostles on the foundation, right? I thought we saw the name of the 12 apostles. I know we saw something about, yep, there it is. Verse 14, the city walls also have 12 foundations, and on them are the 12 names of the Lamb's 12 apostles. What do we mean when we say it's built on the apostles, the church? We are not Roman Catholic. Come on, Todd, go ahead. Or the teachings, the apostolic teaching, apostolic confession here, on what they teach and what they confess, especially with Peter, right? Christ is not saying, I'm building my church on you as a person, Peter, nor on your office as apostle, but on what? Your confession and the apostolic teaching. And so that has significance when we confess the Apostles' Creed, right? The faith of the church. So, we have the totality of Old Testament and New Testament believers here represented with the 12 tribes of Israel, the true Israel, and also the 12 apostles. And number 9, we're not going to spend time on here. You can consider that more on your own, words that you would use to describe the Lord's perfect church. Besides perfect, can you put it into words? I mean, absolutely, stunningly beautiful, magnificent. Do you think of all the jewels that are described here? That's one of my favorite parts when I go to D.C. is to go to the Natural History Museum. And I'm a geek about geology. But of course, then I got down the trivia rabbit hole. We're watching, it's on Hulu right now, the documentary, The Foods That Made America, which is fascinating. They went through the Heinz family and the Post family and the Kellogg family, and just fascinating things. And then I never realized about Marjorie Post creating General Foods and things, but she had a huge collection of gems that she donated to the Smithsonian, and so a lot of the large diamond, not the Hope diamond, the Blue Heart diamond was one that was Marjorie Post's. That stuff just fascinates me, and I like history like that too. So it's amazing when you realize that. We think we are so advanced in this century as to what we're making, but it does not compare to what happened in the early 1900s, in my opinion. It does not. The innovation that was going on then was just absolutely amazing. The only innovation that's going on now is technology, which is essentially to replace humanity, which humanity is just trying to make itself useless. Go figure. It'll be like that until the last day, right? Okay. Next page. We're looking now at this idea of the temple, and it's really fascinating when you read Revelation. It's actually kind of a striking, surprising way that the Apostle John says it in verse 22. The word temple in the Greek is in the emphatic position. A temple I do not see. Like, there's something wrong with this holy Christian church, this triumphant church. There's no temple in it. Well, why? Because it is it. It is a dwelling place of God, it's a dwelling place of his people. And the whole nature then of the relationship with God changes. It's even different than Eden. Because even in Eden, God gave him a place to worship. Where did God give him the place to worship in Eden? Come on, I know I've said this before. That's what Luther says, right? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil was their pulpit, altar, and font. It's the one place that God had given them to express their relationship with God. Otherwise, it had been all one-sided, right? So he gave them a place, in that creation, right? It was that tree. And now, of course, we just think of the tabernacle and the temple and the Psalms we had today, and in the church, let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, in the promise of God that the church, as he gathers, that is where he says, there I will be, when his people are gathered together in a place. So why is there no need for a temple in the New Jerusalem? Let's look at the Exodus 33 here. Then Moses said, please show me your glory. The Lord said, I will make all my goodness pass in front of you, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord in your presence. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show mercy to whom I will show mercy. He said, you cannot see my face, for no human may see me and live. The Lord also said, look, there is a place next to me where you shall stand on the rock. It will happen that while my glory passes by, I will put you in a crevice in the rock. I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take my hand away, and you will see my back, but my face will not be seen. Deutschlander has a lot of fun with this. And I get to see God's backside. That's still a good side of God, right? Why is there no need for the temple anymore? No need for a special place of worship, because this is where God and where his people. Even think about that, the limitations on our earthly worship. Do we see the glory of the face of God right now? No, we don't. We will. So what is the difference between this and the other times when God revealed his glory in the Old Testament? Who got to see his glory then? Or were you going to say something, Levi? Oh, sorry, you flinched. Pat?
Isn't it a representation of his glory, or in this case with Moses, you seek backside because otherwise you die?
Right, you can't be in his fullness, yeah. Or, even, a representation too, because you think of Elijah the same way too, right? Where was God's glory then? It was in a still small voice. We bring all this together. Human beings, as we're created, especially now under the curse of sin, we are so limited. Like no one can see me and live. Well, there we can see God because we are in, he's made our bodies glorious. We no longer have sin, and then we can be in all of his fullness. So all the limitations that we have in our relationship with God are just completely removed. And we tend to think of heaven, of all the things we're going to enjoy, and the things we're going to have, and the things we're going to be without. But what could possibly be greater than having an unlimited relationship with my God? Wow. It's the greatest thing of heaven.
It's hard to imagine because I've run out of time so much, and to imagine that,
Mm-hmm.
or to try to imagine that, just
It's going to get boring, isn't it? Yeah.
here you go for 25 or 6 hours every day. You won't have to worry about that.
Nope, that's right. So the inhabitants in the New Jerusalem have direct access, direct connection with God. Also, the other thing I was going to mention here too is the idea of temple. And this is both Old Testament and New Testament. In the Old Testament, it's the priesthood, and the New Testament is the office of the ministry. The God had to put institutions in place, whether it was his priesthood or whether it's the holy ministry, in order for his work to be done on earth. That all goes away. And the holy priesthood that we enjoy now is but a reflection of that. It will be made in its fullness on that day. And that's another remarkable part of all this. Of all the tastes and glimpses of the church triumphant that we get in this life, they are there, whether it's the feast or the royal priesthood and meeting with God, in the place that he says there, as I said it in the sermon this morning. These are all tastes of heaven. We don't dare overlook that. And I got to go to church again. No, I get to go to the place where I get a taste of heaven. It may just be for an hour, but it's heaven. This is church. My kids misbehave all the time. We'll bring it to church more. By the way, it was interesting. If you want something to dig into, the connection with church attendance and parenting is just so vital. And to know that one of the attendance areas we're struggling in right now are the parents with young children haven't come back yet. And I think some of the apprehension is, and if there's any way that you can help with this, if you have family members who are facing this, is, after not being in church for 15 months, it's going to be hard for the little kids especially to know how to act in church. And I think that's what parents are apprehensive of right now. So any way we can, so if you hear, as we get our children back, if they're making noise in the back, please don't turn around and stare at them. Let them be the children. Now, I'm not saying anybody does. That has happened in other churches, though. So, all right. What's unusual about the gates in the New Jerusalem? Gary pointed this out to us. The gates what? Gates are unlocked, right? Or they're never closed. I was talking with somebody who told me that this week. That when, I can't remember. Anyhow, they park their cars, and especially in Milwaukee, they don't bother locking their doors. Why? Because if they go to steal it, they're going to, they're going to smash the windows out. Or if they're going to steal something, they're going to smash the windows out. So just leave the doors unlocked. Make sure you don't leave anything in there, but then they won't smash your windows. All right? They won't damage your vehicle. Of course, it just, was it a few weeks ago, 3,500 vehicle thefts in the first quarter of the year in Milwaukee. It's just like, holy, yoy. That's just something else. Anyhow, security, right? Even in Wales, we don't leave the locks of our doors. We secure them even in Wales, unless we forget and leave the garage door open and the chipmunks get in the garage, right? That happens too. So the doors are unlocked. Complete security. Let's see if there's anything else. Nope, nothing there. Okay, another part of this section, we have this wonderful illusion of the nations, right? The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it, verse 24 especially. And there's a wonderful connection that we can make with something here that happens on earth. First of all, Psalm 72. He will rule from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. Those who dwell in the desert will bow before him, and his enemies will lick the dust. The kings of Tarshish and of the seacoast will bring tribute. The kings of Sheba and Seba will offer him gifts. All kings will bow down to him, and all nations will serve him. Isaiah 60, then you will look and be radiant. Your heart will race with excitement and burst with joy, for great riches from the sea will be delivered to you. The wealth of the nations will come to you. One of my favorite prophecies from Haggai. We don't get to Haggai very often, and it does come up in the supplemental lectionary. I think it'll come up in the new lectionary as well. Listen, this is what the Lord of armies says. Once again, in a little while, I myself will shake the heavens and the earth and the seas and the dry land. I will shake all nations, and the desired of all the nations will come. And I will fill this house with glory, says the Lord of armies. The silver is mine, the gold is mine, declares the Lord of armies. The glory of this second house will be greater than that of the first one, says the Lord of armies. For in this place I will provide peace, declares the Lord of armies. Talking about the reconstruction of the temple upon the return from exile. But the desired of the nations, right? I'll talk about allusions to our worship in just a minute. So, you have this passage from Revelation 21, and what does it seem like? What story of Jesus' life did the kings bringing their treasures to the New Jerusalem remind you of? Yeah, the Magi coming, right? And just think, again, it makes how God does things just kind of makes your spine tingle a little bit, because, the church triumphant was born that day, right? And here we have though here on earth in absolute humility he came, and yet the heaven is in the manger. And I remember preaching once on Epiphany for a joint festival at one time, and sorry Google, you don't understand what Magi is. Too bad for you. Where was I going with that? Heaven in the manger. Of course the wise men probably didn't show up at the manger because they came to a house, and it could have been up to 9 months or so after the birth, but heaven in a crib, let's call it. Heaven in the baby, the church triumphant already there. And this idea of, the vision before us today too. To whom does everything belong? It's all God's, right? But now in heaven, to whom does everything belong? Us. Can you imagine that? People go hoard Powerball tickets when it gets up to $300 million. If your heart is set on the treasures of, spiritual treasures, God's going to give you a lot more than that when you get to heaven. So should you be interested in $300 million on this earth? or unlimited treasures in heaven. That's not the only reason why we believe, right? Just so we get everything in heaven. That's one of the perks. We get everything in heaven. All right, we'll spend a little bit of time. I know we kind of went through this quickly. I didn't know how fast or how much time we'd spend, so we have a little bit of time to waste. Or not sure, since I waste here. I have always found, this goes back kind of to the question, there are just some great allusions and great comfort in these that the church has picked up on. So I thought we'd take our hymnal out. They're not toxic. We can use them. Let's go first of all to hymn 206. Of course, good hymns are the ones that teach us the scriptures. Phil Nicolai, of course, Catherine Winkworth is translator to Wacherolf, the Queen of Lutheran chorales. What's the king? What's the king? Come on, Pat.
No, it's right there.
Take a crack at it. O morning star, how bright. Oh, sorry, Dave, you had it. I didn't let you answer. O morning star, how bright and fair, how lovely shines the morning star. Wie schön leuchtet der Morgenstern. So that's the King of Lutheran chorales. This is the Queen of Lutheran chorales. We sang the melody last week, I think it was, with Rise to Arms. Another great German hymn. Not written by Nicolai, but it was translated by Winkworth. So, of course, Wake Awake for Night is Flying incorporates a lot of the imagery from the parables of Jesus on the end, in the end times. But I'm especially looking at stanza 3. You can see the overtones of what we just read. Now let all the heavens adore you. Let saints and angels sing before you with harp and cymbals clearest tone. And that's when I push the secret button to make the little dingy bells go on the organ, right? Of one pearl, each shining portal. There's that allusion to the pearl, right? So you probably wonder, why you know, I sing this hymn all the time. What are we talking about pearls? Well, now you know. It's from Revelation 21. Of one pearl, each shining portal, we're dwelling with the choir immortal. We gather around your radiant throne. No vision ever bought, no ear ever caught such great glory. Therefore will we in victory sing hymns of praise eternally. You know, it's one of the, you know, we could sing it too, but just reading through it, and you know, Winkworth was just a masterful translator and poet. And just reading it, bringing it together, might strike us with a little bit more detail. Let's go to 214 since we're close. If you're going through the end time section, these are just absolute solid, stellar hymns through the end time section. I know we're singing 211 next week. Jerusalem, the city fair and high, I don't think it's going to make the new hymnal just because, you know, of the polling that they did. Nobody ever sang it, and that's the stinker with these end times hymns, because if we look at the, you know, church here, you're so finally limited. You know, we could sing 8 hymns a week. I could just not preach. We could just sing hymns. That's a thought. We haven't done that where we just sing hymns. I used to incorporate that, but I'm so fixated on the church here in lectionary. Anyhow, just all hymns. Yeah, I should think about doing that. Maybe we can connect on that and make a hymn festival out of it. Yeah. Lessons and stuff. Yeah. 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 Wasn't that? Oh, you know, we sang that Franzman hymn last week. Oh, that's just, the poetry in that hymn is just, it's kind of over the top and over your head, but you really got to sit and think about it, right? Weary While Trumpeting is another one too. But anyhow, yeah, I don't think this one's Jerusalem, the city fair and high. It's a great, great text, but I just think because of usage, it's not going to get sung. And 214 is the one I wanted to go to. It's written, here's the old Anglican tune. Ewing. Just take a look at the bottom. You know, Bernard of Cluny, 12th century. Jerusalem the Golden is a really old hymn. In the supplement, of course, it's set to Gustav Holstaksted. Is that Saturn or Jupiter? I can't remember. Part of his planets. It's a melody that comes out of the planets too. But I'm more interested in the text here as we look through it. And we'll just walk through all the stanzas, and especially as we consider, we have this vision of the church triumphant before us and what it does for us. You see the overtones of connection with Old Testament and New Testament here as well. Jerusalem the golden, with milk and honey blessed, the sight of it refreshes the weary and oppressed. I know not, oh, I know not, what joys await us there, what radiancy of glory, what bliss beyond compare. I think that's the answer that we've kind of come to. They stand, those halls of Zion, all jubilant with song, and bright with many an angel, and all the martyr throng. The Prince is ever with them, the daylight is serene, the pastures of the blessed are ever rich and green. There is the throne of David, and there from care released, the shout of them that triumph, the song of them that feast. And they who with their leader have conquered in the fight forever and forever are clad in robes of white. O sweet and blessed country, the home of God's elect. O sweet and blessed country that eager hearts expect. Jesus in mercy bring us to that dear land of rest. You are with God the Father and Spirit ever blessed. Don't have to say much else. I could talk musically, especially about the other one, the shout of them, the triumph, the song of them that feast. I mentioned that the Franzman hymn that we sang is kind of the national anthem of the Missouri Synod, and Jerusalem the Golden has become kind of the national anthem of the Wisconsin Synod since the very first worship conference is when, I'm not sure if it was Dale or who did, but Jerusalem the Golden was never matched to Thaxted. I believe that was the first time that happened. And Thaxted has been used for other hymns, O God beyond all praising. There's a Te Deum in the Missouri Synod hymnal that uses Thaxted, but tying Jerusalem the Golden to Thaxted was kind of our thing. And I still remember that worship conference. It was in 1996, and the Minister of Education schools were given 2 scholarships to send students. So 2 went from Martin Luther Prep, and 2 came from Northwestern Prep, and 2 from MLS, and myself and Sarah Backus were the 2 that were sent from MLS, free for nothing. It was the first time that we in Wells did, the worship service and the worship conference with 1,000 people and brought in, the orchestras and the choir. It was just magnificent. And it was down at Carthage College. And this was the closing hymn. I just remember everybody just being completely blown away, matching this text with that tune. And of course, then it made it in the supplement, and it became the Wells Connection. Remember the old Wells Connection song? Aren't we glad we replaced "Come to the Wells for the life of the living"? Woo! Right? We actually put Jerusalem the Golden now, right? So when the Wells Connection, when it was still coming out, it had Jerusalem the Golden with the Thaxted tune. Dale Whitty wrote a really excellent concertato with the full orchestra too. And the only thing I shouldn't say I don't like about it. I always like organ no matter what, and there's no organ written into that. It's completely orchestra. I just like, especially that massive monster organ down at Carthage College. So I also want to go to hymn 14. Oh no, sorry, hymn 7. Hymn 7. I'm just taking you through this, and one of the features of the new hymnal is that Bible verses will be included in the notes underneath, like it was in the old hymnal too. We always had a Bible passage that was attached to each of the hymns. So as I understand it, there will be Bible verses attached. The supplement has them too. Rejoice, rejoice, believers is actually going to be put into the end time section. It's not going to be an Advent, because in Advent you got that weird thing going on where, by the way, the season of end times as we know it is going away. Reverting back to the old, but those Sundays still have that theme. We just don't call them end times anymore. And so we'll actually be doing Reformation when the whole rest of the Lutheran Church in America celebrates Reformation. We'll actually be doing it on that day too. Cool. So the themes of those last Sundays of the church year will still remain the same. So we'll have the opportunity to sing these, and it won't mash up so much with Advent like it does now. Like we talk about Judgment Day, and then 2 weeks later we talk about Judgment Day again, or have the exact same lessons. That's not going to happen anymore. But anyhow, Rejoice, Rejoice, Believers is just a magnificent hymn too, and we usually sing this on a regular basis. The one I wanted to point out is the one from Haggai in verse 4. There it is. Arise, desire of nations, O Jesus, now appear, the hope and expectation of every Christian here. With hearts and hands uplifted, we plead, O Lord, to see the day of earth's redemption that sets your people free. So again, my point is, when you look at hymns and you look at the treasury of hymns that we have and what God has given us, and we don't just make stuff up, especially good hymns. There's all these scriptural overtones and references to the passage, even texts and words that come out directly out of the Bible. I think that's what makes the church's song so precious. Go ahead, Tammy.
In the new hymnal, in the old hymnal, the blue one, they always have kind of like the scripture reference where
Yep.
the thoughts are.
Yep.
I kind of miss that.
Yeah, that's what I said. As I understand it, the new hymnal will contain scripture references, and I think it'll be more than one too. It's the supplement. We don't have printed supplements just because we'd be fumbling with too many books then. The supplement has 2 or 3 passages if they apply, is a part of that. And I remember when we did hymns when I was in grade school, that became the hymnology Bible studies. We looked at those verses and we talked about how they connected up. But you see a lot of these hymns contain references from a lot of different hymns. And I'm 99% sure, of course I've been saying that through this entire hymnal project, and I've been proven wrong on more than one occasion, so I guess I'm not 99% sure, but I'm almost positive they will include the Bible references in there. I've appreciated too, because it was a supplement that shifted in putting the references for the songs of liturgy too. With the holy, holy, holy being the vision of Isaiah in the songs of Palm Sunday together. I just think it's important to impress that on people that, again, with the songs of liturgy, we're not making this stuff up. Go ahead, Dave. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Gerhardt too, yeah. Yep. Yeah, and you've seen it. I put notes in. I put a lot of notes in Gerhardt. You think of Gerhardt. We sang evening and morning, and our hymnal only has 2 stanzas, and that's why I included the text from the Lutheran Service Book. Our new hymnal will have all 4 stanzas of evening and morning, thank goodness. But it's fun to put these hymns together. And evening and morning is a hymn that I know we sing every year because I'm the one that picks the hymns, and it's one we're going to sing every year, especially when we have the stormy seas. But that's a Gerhardt hymn. It's just absolutely brilliant. But it's a 2-pager in our hymnal, it's 2.5-pager, and I think that's why a lot of people stay away from it. But those additional stanzas in there are just really brilliant stanzas. I have fun with the cymbal bells on that one too, especially when the fair sun shows its face. That's when the cymbal bells go on. So, maybe when Vicar gets here, I'll be able to play. I'll make sure that I schedule myself to play on the days when I pick out the good hymns, right, or the easy hymns, probably more than anything else. No, but yeah, the stories behind it, especially Gerhardt. One of my other favorite stories, and for some reason there's a lot of Wells pastors that do not like "When Peace Like a River" as well with my soul, but Horatio Spafford and the whole story about losing his entire family on the Ville du Havre as it sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, and then him writing that hymn as he was sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. I know I've talked about that in a sermon, and I printed that in the service folder too. So, and the information is there, and that's my thing, Dave. Is the handbook. We have the handbook. How many of you have a Christian worship handbook at home? Well, Pat, of course you do. But there's just, you can read up on all that stuff. Even like the Franzman brothers, with Martin, ended up going Missouri Synod. And I was scratching my head last week as I'm thinking that. I'm like, he was in the Missouri Synod when we broke fellowship. I just can't imagine what that was like for as solid as a theologian he was. To be in the middle, or to what extent he was in the middle, I don't know. With Warner being here and writing the Bible history commentary, and Professor Franzman Gerhardt being at Northwestern at the time too. It's just, there's so much to that. And Dave, I think you're getting at a bigger part too. It's if we ignore our history, we lose something rich when we do that. Yep. What are you pointing at, Jenny? No, Dr. Pat.
You were talking about Catherine Winkworth. So Catherine Winkworth, very much an English name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Anglican Church. Her mother dies. Her father remarries. The new mom doesn't really want her and her sister. They're sent to Germany to live with an aunt.
That's how she learned it. Okay.
That's where she learns German.
That's how she came to translate them.
God works in mysterious ways, right? We have this incredible body of hymns that she translated, and not that she just was able to translate
Oh,
the meaning of what was there, but that she could make it rhyme.
yeah.
And she did like, I don't know, 1,600.
Oh, just, yeah.
It's huge.
And that's where, that's one of the things a couple of the hymns that I know are going to be in the new hymnal, the tinkering of the translation we've done, and I just don't like them because we have way too many English contractions in them, like aisle or wheel, and they never did that. They it's not just having thous and hasts and things like that, and it's just they were masters of the language in ways that we're not. And I even said that when we were when the whole Bible translation issue came up, and I said it's not as much as that we can't handle the Greek and Hebrew, is this we stink at English. That's the hard part, because English is a tough language, even to put into poetry. I know, but she is a great blessing to the church. I think she made the Lutheran calendar in the Missouri Synod as a commemoration, because they added hymn writers and translators and things like that. That may be a note I have to dig my handbook out for and put that in the bulletin at some time. I got all those extra pages I can use up. Maybe I'll do that, and I'll see what hymns I have. Use up those blank pages in the back. Catechism is a good thing too, but yeah. All right, that's all I have today. I know we're kind of short, or we kind of ran short on time, but that's okay too. So we'll pick up chapter 22 next week. Again, I'll be here next week, and then the week after that, it will be up north, and Pastor Duberstein will be here. Let's pray. May the blessing of the eternal God be on us as we work and worship, His light to guide us, His presence to strengthen us, His peace to unite us now and forever. Amen. Oops, got to turn off the camera. I don't want to be live all this time.